All right. Hey, everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us.
Yeah, it's great to be back.
So today we're talking about something I think is going to resonate with a lot of you, especially those of you out there who are, gearing up for those UPSC exams.
Oh, absolutely. This one's a big one.
Essential religious practices.
Yeah, you got it.
Now, this topic is always kind of a hot-button issue, but it's been especially in the news recently with this, Bombay High Court ruling on the loudspeaker use.
Mm.
And it really kind of brings to the forefront, this whole question of what aspects of religious practice are actually protected by the Constitution.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really fascinating area where, the law and sort of like the lived reality of people's faith kind of come into conflict.
It's true. That's true. And we're going to be diving into some great articles that we found in the Times of India and Indian Express to kind of help unpack all of this stuff.
Yeah, some really interesting perspectives in those articles.
For sure. But I think before we even get into the specifics of any of these cases or anything like that, we need to kind of back up for a second and just ask the basic question. What are we even talking about when we say essential religious practices?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a tricky term, right? Because how do you define what's essential to someone's faith?
Right. It's like trying to figure out the essential ingredients in a recipe or something.
Exactly. It's like, if you're making biryani, for example, like you can't skip the rice or the spices.
Yeah.
But, maybe whether you use a specific type of oil or whether you add potatoes is more flexible.
Yeah.
So similarly, these essential religious practices, or ERPs as they're often called, these are the practices that are considered like so fundamental to a religion that they're actually protected under Articles 25 and 26 of the Constitution.
Right. The freedom of religion.
Exactly. So everything else, is kind of up for debate.
Okay, so that makes sense. But I mean, how do courts even go about deciding what's essential and what's not?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a pretty slippery slope to me.
It is. It's a really, really tricky area, and that's where these landmark Supreme Court cases come in.
Okay.
So, one of the big ones, the one that kind of set the stage for all of this was the Shurur-Mutt case back in 1954.
Okay.
And, this wasn't just about managing property or anything like that. The court's reasoning in this case actually established the idea that these practices have to be essential to the religion's tenets.
Okay.
Not just something that's been followed traditionally.
Interesting.
So it had to be really intrinsically linked to what the religion was all about.
So that case set the stage for how we think about this even today.
Exactly. It set this really important precedent.
Got it.
And then you have cases like the Durga Committee case in 1961, which kind of delved even deeper into how to determine if something's truly essential. And basically the court said, look, it's not enough for something to have been done for a long time. Just because something's a tradition doesn't make it essential. It has to be intrinsically linked to the religion's core beliefs.
I see, yes.
And then, of course, you have the big one, the Ismail Faruqi case in 1994, which I'm sure a lot of our listeners are familiar with.
Yeah, that one was definitely a controversial one.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And, this case dealt with the Babri Masjid dispute and whether a mosque was considered essential for Islamic practice.
Right.
And the court's ruling that it wasn't, sparked a lot of debate about how the ERP doctrine was being applied and whether it was being applied consistently across different religions.
Right. So we've got this whole, historical background, this legal back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
But how does this recent case, the Bombay High Court ruling on loudspeakers,
right,
how does that fit into all of this?
Well, so in this case, you had residents in Kurla, Mumbai who were complaining about noise pollution from loudspeakers being used for religious purposes. Oh. And their complaints had kind of been ignored, for a while. But the High Court stepped in and said, you know what, loudspeakers are not protected under Article 25.
Wow.
Regardless of religion.
So even though it's, very common for people to use loudspeakers, for various religious purposes.
Yeah.
The court basically said it's not an essential practice.
That's right.
So what does that even mean, on a practical level, for our listeners out there who are, studying for these UPSC exams and stuff?
Well, I think it really highlights the fact that noise pollution is a public health issue and that the police have an obligation to enforce these noise regulations even when it comes to religious practices.
Interesting.
So it's a really clear example of how the ERP doctrine plays out in a real world situation.
Yeah.
And how courts kind of have to balance these competing interests.
Yeah. Wow. This is giving me a lot to think about, and I'm sure it's doing the same for our listeners.
Yeah, definitely.
So where do we go from here? I mean, is this ERP doctrine, is it here to stay, or is it, as you said earlier, is it kind of a constantly evolving thing?
Well, I think the debate around the ERP doctrine is far from over.
Okay.
You have critics who argue that it's applied inconsistently,
Right.
that it's not really clear who should be the one to decide what's essential.
Yeah, is it the courts? Is it religious leaders? Is it, the people who practice the religion themselves?
Exactly. And then you have questions about, like, about practices that are evolving, as we move into modern times. How do we deal with those?
So it's like a constantly moving target.
It really is.
It's not just a matter of like memorizing a bunch of case names for an exam.
Right.
You have to actually understand the nuances, the debate.
Yeah.
How these courts are grappling with these concepts.
Absolutely. It's a dynamic area of the law.
For sure. For sure.
And, I think that's what makes it so fascinating to study.
It's true. It's true.
And for your UPSC aspirants out there, I mean, it's crucial to stay informed about these debates.
Yeah. This is going to be on the exam for sure.
Definitely.
So folks, we've covered a lot today. And we really encourage you to kind of dive deeper into these issues yourself. Use resources like the Times of Indian Express and see what you think.
Yeah, absolutely. Form your own opinion.
So, hit that subscribe button, share this episode with your fellow UPSC aspirants.
Yeah, spread the knowledge.
And we'll see you in the next deep dive.
Looking forward to it.
All right, take care, everyone.
See ya.